I'm glad you're coming around. How you doing?
Anxiety attacks, no sleep, depression. Hitting all the cliches. Sometimes it just feels like
You're getting lost up there.
It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
Miss Andrews, are you okay?
definitely not.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bomb Squad. This is Andrew Hada, and if you saw, we're still in empty space promotions mode, and we're never getting out of it. We're on month 5 of it. No, I'm just kidding. It's still, I think, going to be in June, but still, we're going to keep going. And we have another special guest, and also we got the whole team together today. I know that you missed William for the last 2 of them, but he's back. And Josh never leaves. He just sits here when we finish an episode and we turn off the lights, and he just stays until we go again.
Like Kenneth from 30 Rock.
Yeah, he just never.
Just wait for day.
He's like the dude from Office Space with the stapler. And we have a special guest. We brought back AC Gavit for another episode. I don't know if you know this, but AC Gavit made the incredible opening credits for The Empty Space. We originally had something else. My original idea was I kind of like sand is a big motif in the movie. And so I had this sand kind of falling. And we did it practical because I was like, oh, I want to do practical effects. And then we saw the limitations of practical effects on an indie budget. And so it was okay. Like, Josh, do you remember that opening?
Vaguely.
Yeah. It was okay, but like I think at one point you could, because we had to build this thing that would let sand go. Like it was essentially like a sand or like a sand calendar clock or whatever they're called, and it would drop the sand in, and we had to build it, but we had to put glass in between so the sand wouldn't go everywhere. And there's like a point where you can see me in the reflection, or you can like, there's just like smudges after the first take.
Yeah.
And so it looked rough.
I want to see it.
Yeah. And I had the original idea where I did kind of want this thing of like of her turning into stars, but I was like, well, I have no idea how to do that, so I just decided to do the sand one. And then we decided to like, since we were going to try to sell it, we really wanted that opening, because to me the opening kind of took it out of the film. It like instantly showed you what our budget limitations were. And so I wasn't a huge fan of it. So then I hired I was talking to a graphic designer, like someone who does CGI, to like make it. And they like ghosted me 100%. But while I was talking to him, I was like, you know what else would be cool? If she could turn into stars. And then while I was talking to him, I realized how to do it. And I was talking to Abby, and then so I asked her if she could do it, and then you did, and so it came out really good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. How do you feel about it? Have you seen the full movie?
I haven't seen the full movie yet, but I've seen the opening that you made that we got put together. No, I haven't seen the full movie yet, but I've reserved some space this weekend to actually make time to do that. So
yeah, well, and it's super cool, like especially now because we saw the premiere like last week, and it was like super cool to see it on the big screen. Like it just makes it kind of goes for originally the titles kind of looked rough, and now the titles like kind of make you think that this movie had a budget when it really didn't. So that's always good.
When she said she hadn't seen it, I assumed you were going to tell her to go rent it on like Friday or something.
Waiting for if you're like
because
AC,
I'm gonna go give like money to it. So
yeah, and you haven't seen it, which I assume is not that many people because it's a phenomenon.
So far,
go check it out on VOD and also rentals. I think by now it should be on Amazon. It's definitely on Vudu. You can buy it on Amazon, the DVD. You can also buy it at Walmart, at Barnes and Nobles, at Discount DVD, everyone's favorite store that doesn't sound like a scam at all. You can find it everywhere you buy DVDs. So go check it out. And before we continue on to our movie, I mean, we kind of did an intro last time, but can we get you again to kind of like tell us a little bit about your art and everything like that, and just kind of give a little introduction to yourself for the new listeners?
Sure. I am a freelance illustrator slash artist slash whatever people want me to draw, I will draw it kind of person. The freelance life. You can find my portfolio at acgavit.com. And otherwise, I'm not anywhere on the internet.
Perfect.
It's a good choice.
Yeah, it's.
I love.
Used to do Twitter, don't do it anymore. It's great.
Yeah. I do Twitter, guys, and I'm building that following of bigots and anti-vaxxers. I'm really getting them on I'm getting on the empty space fan club. It's building numbers every day. All I have to do is say, "Oh, now it's woke to not make movies," and I've got them.
Oh,
I love associating with you, Andrew. I love associating with you.
And we also, because we worked on the last ones and then we worked on this one again, and it's been quite fun to work. And this one was more in line with your artistic sensibility. I guess the last ones was too. You made all the all the set design.
Yeah, I did all like the set design and like the prop stuff and that kind of thing, and that's fun too. It's, I don't know. That was like in school and like using a truck a lot, so did a ton of that in school. And I think mostly I fell into it because I was the person who had a truck and I owned 2 bookcases that could be moved around, and suddenly it was like, oh my god, Abby's got bookcases, that looks like a real house now.
Yeah. I know for us it was one of the big selling points was that you knew how to handle a gun, and us libs over here had no idea how to be around one, and so we needed a gun wrangler to be responsible.
Thank you to my extremely conservative father, and
right now.
It's funny because I get asked that question a lot, and I'm like, have you guys seen my movies? That's clearly a toy. But on the first one, I always bring that up as like, because when we did that one, we made sure the firing pin was out. Like there was one scene where they had to load it with real bullets, and we had to the whole set was cleared. There was no firing pin, so you couldn't shoot it anyway. But still, we made sure that Abby was the only one to hold the bullets, as well as, I mean, the actors, of course, but she was the one who made sure every time that it was unloaded, and I think that's still important. I think it was very wise for us to do that, and I didn't even know that was something they specifically did, but we just did it because we thought it was the safest way possible.
Yeah,
you're wise, man. You just said
the logical thing to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think especially when you're on set, there's just this, because you're bored so much of the time, especially if you're not Andrew Hada directing, and so you just kind of want to play with stuff that's hanging around, Yeah. And so if you don't have someone being responsible with the gun, that will definitely get we played around with everything that was everywhere. You just kind of pick something up and then just keep it with you. And so for those struggling filmmakers, get yourself an Abby, I guess, someone who knows what they're doing.
I think the important thing too with that kind of thing is buy-in from the crew and the director and people who are, because the prop master or whoever is one person trying to manage that. You really have to have the support of everyone, or it kind of will fly out of your hands pretty quickly. So thank you also for being gun responsible.
Yeah, I don't like guns. I don't touch them, despite my tough guy persona. I don't go around any. Besides this tough guy persona that you've seen where we reviewed Magic Mike.
Yeah,
I don't touch these guns. But now on, also me and William and we all graduated from the same college. We went to a college in New Mexico, and so this is a reunion. Also, Josh is here, and much like when we were in college, he's come along for no reason, and so.
Josh is just around,
Again. I tell you, the lights go off, he's here.
Josh is just a vibe, and you can't get rid of vibes.
You know,
Yeah.
to
Especially
be
not a
fair,
good one.
To be fair, a couple weeks ago, we went to your college because my wife had never seen an MSU. And she's
Nice.
like, "Oh, there's kind of nothing here, huh?" I was
Well,
like, "Yeah,
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff.
she's been to a lot of college, a lot of universities, and there's usually like a lot of more.
Did she even see the Panda Express we have?
The Little
Embarrass
Caesars
yourself
that's been
less,
there
Josh.
since
Yeah.
2011. McDonald's I bought weed from all the time.
Yeah. I did show her the editing room where we would end up like, and there, because we had those cards. I forgot we had key cards, and we were able to just go into the editing lab.
Oh yeah.
And at the end of the semester, it was like us and then like Matt Wilson just being there till 5 a.m, just like editing something that was due 2 days before. And so
that was the animation lab across the hall too.
Mhm.
It's
Oh yeah.
just like 10 kids stacked into the animation lab at 5 a.m. Like everyone's slightly slap happy.
Yeah. And then there was this. Go ahead.
Oh, I could like open the door like at the entrance of CMI with a rock to like go smoke your cigarettes outside.
Right.
We were all smoking so many cigarettes. It was our fucking life, bro.
It was
I feel
constant.
I picked up smoking during that, and I quickly dropped it after that. But it was just like, yeah, during school, it was like, oh, chain
Time to
smoking
smoke.
cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what else? And then there's a sign now on the equipment room that says, "You have to show what class you're using this equipment for." And I'd like to think that was due to us
Hell yeah.
constantly renting equipment for no reason just to use it.
No one
Our
else is
legacy
doing it.
continues.
Yeah.
They kept saying yes.
Yeah.
They should change that rule. That's dumb.
I know, right?
You're here to make art, not fucking sit around.
Yeah, what am I paying you for? But yes. Also, I got an email from our professor, Sherwin, and he was like, "I saw William and Abby in the credits. Is that the William?" And I was like, "Yeah, it'd be very weird if it wasn't."
Yeah.
Just random people with the same name.
Seeks out
You
people
just-
of the same name, yeah.
Going around collecting
Sherwin.
people.
It's like I only hang out with people if they're named William Murdoch, and unless and I change their names to that.
Right.
But yes,
Josh,
that was Josh. I've been trying to get Josh to change it, but he doesn't do it. And he doesn't leave.
God,
get it.
Josh.
Come on.
What can you do?
Thank you.
Well, nothing
It's
apparently.
It's that kind of witticism is why I keep him around. So last time Abby picked, and she picked their first musical, Pirates, which it's funny because I had never heard of that movie. Yeah, I had never seen it, of course. And now that we reviewed it, I see it all the time. Like I guess there's like the gif of him like with the cigarette and he flips it in his mouth. That's that's on Twitter constantly.
Yeah.
And I like to be like, "Oh, that's from Pirates. I know what that's from."
I've seen a failed musical from like the Technicolor age.
Yeah, it's a good one. Go check that one out and then watch our review of it where we talk a lot about the history. But so this time we picked a movie. And this is good because we have guests and we let the guests pick. But there was a couple of movies that I wanted to see just in general. And we were going to have to wait on all those. And so once Abby reminded me that we got to pick this time, I was like, oh, I know what movie I want to pick. So we picked 1988's Miracle Mile, directed by Steve DeJarnot, starring Anthony Edwards, Mare Winningham, and a bunch of character actors that we'll probably talk about as we go along. William, why don't you tell us what this movie is about?
Well, it's about a guy who sees a girl and then he misses the connection. He doesn't talk to her. But then they meet anyways, and they kind of start dating, but he's, I think, only in town for a few days. And they're going to go meet up to dance one night at midnight when she gets off work, but he sleeps through his alarm. And then they all find themselves in the midst of a nuclear warfare scare. And they're just trying to find their people and get out of town, but no one even knows if it's real. But it's just kind of like an 80s kind of, I don't know. It was like a weird, whimsical movie. I thought it was pretty great. It was light, yet also very heavy at the same time.
Yeah.
It was cool.
What did that? Well, and this is one of those movies where I had it on my Tubi forever, and then it was just one random day, and I realized that it's under an hour and a half, and I was like, okay, fire it up. And then I watched it and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies that I also wanted to share because it's again, so it's this guy. It's like the classic boy meets girl situation for the first like 15 minutes, and then he's like at a diner, kind of like lamenting that he missed the date, and he's like outside, and a phone call rings, and and he answers it, and it's this random person trying to get his dad on the phone, and the dad guy's like, "Well, tell my dad like to leave the city because they're about to shoot the bombs." And then you hear him get shot on the line. And of course, a payphone for our younger listeners is what we used to have to make phone calls outside of our house. And so he hears the phone call, but he doesn't know if it's real. And so, like, the whole rest of the movie is them trying to like figure out if it's real, but also trying to leave LA because LA is about to get nuclear holocaust. And so it's a very interesting movie. And now, guys, William said he loved it. Josh and Abby, what did you guys think of it?
I dug it. It's fun.
Go ahead.
No, yeah. So yeah, it's fun. I think it's really cool to see like one of these like apocalypse stories like told from a really small perspective and essentially real time. It was, and I also love the color palette. So
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it felt so dreamlike too. Like
And-
everything, like, empty streets, and like the colors were so like
Mhm.
yeah,
odd and
that
in your
really
face.
captured that like I'm at a diner at 3 a.m. kind of
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah.
Well,
It
that's
also
good because it's scored by Tangerine Dream. So it's
Right?
like kind
Oh
of a
yeah, that
perfect
score was so
synthy.
good. Yeah.
came up in a
Yeah.
Friday
Everyone
night
has tangerine dreams. Do you?
I do.
course.
And I'm glad Abby brought that up because, oh yeah, it does take place in real time. Well, for the most part, because the phone call, the guy says, "Oh, there's 90 minutes before the rockets launch," or no, it's not even 90 minutes. I think
Hour
it's
and 10
70
minutes.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the whole movie is kind of that, but then they kind of pass it, and we'll talk about that a little later. But the whole thing is like in real time, which I thought was also interesting. Josh, what did you think of the Miracle Mile? Because I know that last night Josh was hating a little bit, and so I had to call him out on
Uh-oh.
it.
To be fair, okay, let's just say the first 5 minutes of the movie, you're like, oh, this is going to be some bullshit. Because, okay, actually, this is one of those things you maybe you didn't notice, but if you did, you know how they have all the companies before the credits with their like little logos? One's called like the Hemdell Film Corporation, and their logo
Yeah.
was all the letters stacked on
Mhm.
top of each other,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. They
Um,
spread it out.
and then it has this like adaptation ass like opening sequence where it's like describing the history of the planet and like
Oh,
evolution
yeah.
and
Oh, I
like
love
development.
it.
That was
And
kind
I
of
was
cool.
like,
Yeah.
ugh.
If we
But I love
end, start at the
adaptation.
beginning.
And
Yeah, it was kind of like adaptation.
yeah, and then it's them in the museum kind of goofing around, and it's like the credits are like sliding into frame, and his
Yeah.
his narration's very like, will I ever find love? And I'm like, oh, this guy's the fucking worst.
And
And then it's
I
all-
want to say that the whole first half of the movie kind of feels like they're trying to do like a John Hughes thing where they're
Mhm.
really trying to
Yeah.
like if you didn't watch the rest of the movie and you just saw that first half, you're like, oh, just some romantic comedy about like kind of like Better Off Dead or like the John Cusack film or something like that. And I
Yeah.
think I like the bait and switch because you're like, wait, what the hell is this movie
it's
about?
a hard
I know.
it's such a hard switch. You almost wish you could like watch it without having read the description, just like
Yeah.
be totally
Oh, just to see it.
surprised by
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the hard shift is very, and then just the series of escalations is so good. Like
Right. You
both
got to
in,
be on
like-
board or
both
you're
in,
not
like-
going to like
like-
this movie for sure.
yeah, like the extremity of like what's happening, like violence and whatnot, but also like the absurdity.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
when he's just
Right.
running around a drim screaming for a helicopter pilot with a gun in the air. It's just
Yeah.
it's such
Yeah.
a good scene. You
That's
know?
one of my favorite parts. Or like, well, so because one of the best parts is he gets a phone call and then he goes into this diner and he just starts telling people like, "Hey, does anyone here have a son who works on a base?" And to me, that was one of my favorite scenes because it is like, you know, William, we've been in an LA diner at 3 a.m. It's just a random collection of people, and like every once in a while, someone has a freak out. You just kind of keep eating your eggs and keep an eye on it to see if it gets worse. But
Right.
like that's kind of what I like so much of this movie, and that's why I'm glad William is on here. William, didn't so much of this feel like when we were kind of just kind of going around LA in the middle of the night. Like it just like LA
Yeah.
surprisingly gets desolate at night, and you're just kind of around a bunch of random people where there's like a guy in a suit and then like a guy in a mesh vest. And you
Yeah.
know, like you just don't really know who's gonna walk in next.
Yeah, no, especially around like Koreatown. Like when we first moved there, you had to go back home for a second, and I just like would walk around Koreatown at night just by myself, and it was like another world for sure. Like from like a small town to like that bigger city, it was like
Yeah.
just a country boy in this whole new world.
Yeah.
And this movie felt like that for sure, all the
Yeah,
time.
and it definitely really managed that idea like of the day Los Angeles and night Los Angeles are completely different worlds. And
Yeah.
this movie is probably one of the best movies I've seen that kind of captures that feel. And also, it has like again, if you've ever seen RoboCop, the police chief in RoboCop plays like the head cook of the diner, and he's like the one who's like he
Oh
kind of
yeah.
believes, but he's also like wants him to get out of his cafe, and he has a bunch of regulars. But it's funny because I don't think I've ever seen the police chief of RoboCop in another movie.
He
Yeah.
was so good. I thought he was like working with the government at first. I was like, does he know Landa? Like, is he like, did he just happen to be at this little diner that has these secret agents? But
Yeah,
at the same
and then
time,
there's
he
a
kind of
secret
was just
agent
randomly
there.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What?
Denise Crosby, Tasha Yar from
Mhm.
TNG Star Trek, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, same haircut.
Oh.
So it's very like because she's kind of the one who's like spreading it to try to get all the resources to the
Mhm.
helicopter. Yeah,
This lady would
And
never
she's
get
also like, because she gets on the phone and she's, and again, it says 1988, and so the phone is like this big, and she answers it every time. She has to like really pull it apart to call it, and so it's cool to see that too. But yeah, she starts calling to like figure it out, and then it also gives you that like there's a little bit of social commentary running throughout the whole thing because you have her come to the realization that this might be real, and also that nobody was going to tell her if she didn't check in on it. And I kind of like it's one of those movies, and what maybe you guys can have better examples, but like kind of reminds me of like Reservoir Dogs or like some of these 80s 90s movies where you watch it and none of the stars are famous, but it just stars a bunch of people you've seen in a bunch of other things. Like it has
Mhm.
the teacher, or it has a bad guy from Ghostbusters 2. It has Bubba from Forrest Gump.
Oh
It
yeah, that
has
was crazy.
yeah, it has
the
the
alien
other
bounty hunter from X Files.
yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it has the dude from Terminator 2, the psychiatrist, and Terminator 1 as well. And so it's just cool to see, like, you can tell that this director just found a bunch of actors that he liked and put them in these small roles. But they're all such good actors that, like, there's no reason for us to remember the cook in the diner, but he does so well with the material that he makes it his own character. And I think that like really is it's something Tarantino does really well, but it's also something that a lot of filmmakers used to do all the time. Instead of like just casting randoms, they would cast like a kind of established actor to play these like one day roles, and it just elevates the roles to me.
it's also like I mean it's funny because I know we talk a lot of Marvel trash on this
I
podcast,
know.
but they'll still do kind of like, oh, look at this like cool actor for stunt casting,
Mhm.
but it's like Bill Murray and Ant Man. It's like just sedately reading his Ant Man lines. Like no one's getting anything out of that. It's like they don't really
Right.
like let you it be like a special role. You know, it's just very
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
I would be
different
very
filmmaking
curious,
style.
like how much of that is. Um, I'm trying to think who it. Anthony Hopkins apparently has a thing where he has scripts that are DNR, as in like uh, that are basically don't bother, where you just go and read your lines.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious how much of that is like the actor showing up for the Disney paycheck and what is apparently amazing crafty. Um,
Oh.
which, like, I mean, hey, make your paper and eat some delicious Disney food.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And how much is just like, again, not to be too trash talking about Marvel, but how much is the soulless Marvel machine like
Right.
influencing that performance stuff? I'm sure it's somewhere in
Yeah.
between the two, right? But
Yeah, there's such a voice and like an established brand that like to have a unique character that you make your own would just totally throw the entire movie off. It would just be
yeah.
so weird.
Mhm.
And I wonder how much of it is like if you do too good a job, they end up keeping you forever. and so
Yeah.
you don't, you don't get to do anything else. And so like I think
Sorry,
it's good that,
Taika. We got you.
You're here forever.
and like when I reading some of the trivia for this, apparently this took him 8 years to get made because like if you look at this
Oh, yeah.
movie, of course, you know who's gonna fund this thing.
It's a hard sell. Oh,
Yeah,
fuck.
but I think Josh went offline, but that's okay. We can go. And so I think like it's kind of cool that this guy had almost every role in mind for it, you know. And I think that that works really well. Also, this is funny for all you Lynch heads, is that they offered the role of Fred the cook, who eventually goes to the RoboCop chief, to the main character Jack Nance from Eraserhead, and he turned it down because he wanted to focus on his job as a security guard, which is the most like
That's baller as
this
fuck.
is what the Eraserhead star would say.
Yeah.
That's thrilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've seen what I've seen, guys, you wouldn't do another movie again.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
I know. That's so funny.
But it's super cool. And like it's kind of hard to kind of talk about this movie because after the thing goes, it just becomes kind of a race to see if he can save himself. And so he's just kind of running into people and like people will come in and out of his lives. It very much feels like an adventure.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how much do we want to spoil? What do you guys think?
Well, I don't really know if there's much of like. I was never like on the edge of my seat, you know.
Yeah.
Like it was
I
great
think-
and I was very entertained, but I didn't. If somebody would have spoiled it for me, I don't think I would have cared that much. But
Yeah,
not that
I
we should
don't.
spoil it, but
I think there's that thing where like the only thing that matters throughout the movie is if they're gonna survive or not, or if they're gonna be able to get out.
the
And
helicopter.
so, yeah, everything else is kind of like I don't really care how this resolves. I want to see what happens next. You know, like kind of that
Mm.
almost Wizard of Oz, like you know, like the Wizard of Oz. You know that they're gonna get to the end, but it's like how are they gonna do it? And that's where the fun comes out. You know.
Mhm.
Yeah,
and
I
it-
think it's kind of using that as an excuse to tell like small character stories in that space. So like you've got Wilson and his sister, and even the helicopter guy.
yeah, the
but
pilot.
yeah, I think like beat by beat, it's not I don't think it would be particularly interesting to go beat by beat. I think maybe a better thing to talk about, like I guess, the themes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and before we do that, and like it's funny that we talk shit about Marvel, and I'm just like, look at this cameo, but because they take Wilson hostage and they need to put gas, and so they go to a gas station, and the gas station attendant is Mr. Blue from Reservoir Dogs. And I've never seen that guy in anything else either.
Yeah.
And also, this was filmed about 15 years before Reservoir Dogs, and he looks the exact same age and the exact same face. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, and I think I think Abby had a great idea of just kind of mentioning the themes. And I kind of talked a little bit about the social commentary, but did you guys get that as well?
Which social commentary?
Just kind of like the whole social commentary of like the culture in LA, the kind of way in the 80s we didn't care about each other that much. You know, like it's just this weird kind of because I kind of look at it there. I had like you look at like some of the other social commentary, like Total Recall and RoboCop. Apparently, that's the only social commentary I watch is Verhoeven ones. But it's very anti-corporate and very like you know, it's the corporations. We got to kind of stop them. But this one was kind of like it kind of passed that era, and it's like we're in a corrupt state, and eventually they're just going to throw bombs, and we're not going to have any idea. And it's just kind of like the government is leaving us to ourselves, and that's just kind of how it is. You know? Did you guys get that feeling too?
Yeah, I think like something about that, like kind of what Abby was saying about like smaller stories in like this larger thing. It's like if we just imagine that the government has abandoned us and that we are going to have a nuclear holocaust, like all you really have is just like, I guess like what you love like around you in a way. And so it's like every single person that was like trying to get to the helipad, it's like they have to go get someone. They've got to go get someone. Everyone has to go get someone. And it's like, I don't know, no one's really wrong for doing that. It's kind of fucking up the main character's plans, but it's like, how are you going to get mad at a guy for stealing the cop car to go get Charlotta or whatever? And so it's like, you don't really realize like how important these things are, which this is kind of a trite way to put it all. but until a nuclear holocaust is coming. But it's just like the desperation people have, even when they don't even know if they're going to die, they just think they might die.
Right.
It really makes you go to like what you think is going to be what you want to see at the end of the world. I guess you're going to want to have the people around you that you want to die with, and that's I thought what this movie was kind of like. Maybe think about who that could be in your life, William.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point though, because I think the surface level, like it's on the surface level, it seems very cynical, right? Like how quickly everything, like once word gets out, and I love the implication that it's just Anthony Edwards's character told 5 people, and those people all told 5 people, and suddenly that does actually get out to the entire city, essentially, or at least the entire neighborhood. Like, despite how like cynical that seems, like really they're, like you said, everyone has someone that they love that they're trying to take with them, that at the end of the day is kind of like, I don't know. It's the whole movie starts out with the whole history of life, and here we are in this natural anthropology museum at the tar pits, and also like ends on, we're going to preserve, like something might be preserved for that might be found forward, and it won't necessarily be the things that were super cynical of everyone like running around shooting each other. It'll be 2 people together in a tar pit.
Yeah.
And I think like, and it's such a good point, because like William said, like there's not a lot of stakes in this, but there's a bunch of stakes. And so you have it where every time they would meet someone else and they'd be like, he would kind of explain it. And it's kind of a funny thing because Anthony Edwards playing the main guy, he keeps changing what it is because he wants them to believe it as quickly as possible. So he doesn't want to tell them there's a nuclear bomb coming. And so he keeps changing what the thing is, but every single person is like, oh, well, let me go get this person. Let me go get that person. And I think like every time they did that, it kind of made me at least think a little bit, who would I go get? And I think they did something that was very tragic, that they didn't really talk about how tragic it is, but they just kind of do it. And you have to like kind of get that by yourself. It's just that like, if there's a bomb coming in 70 minutes, you're not going to be able to save everyone. You can maybe grab whoever's closest to you, and you have to find that person. And so even though the entire movie is kind of cynical, I mean, like, the whole idea that the world's going to end and you can't stop it, but the underlining idea that like, if the world's going to end and you can't stop it, people just want to kind of grab that person that they love. Even if like in the main character's points, it might be just love from one day ago. At least you have that person and you can be with them. And like, that's more important than like literally every nuclear bomb in the world. It's just, you're kind of looking for that. And I think like that, I think to me, that's kind of what made it very special, is that the world is, it like reminded, like the world is cynical, not our world, but yes, kind of our world too. But the world is cynical in the movie, but the people aren't. The people are looking for love, and they're looking for that connection. They're looking to save the most important thing to them. And every single person that is put against this, except for the guy on the roof who just wants to do drugs, every single person,
my brain for an earthquake.
they want to find someone that they love with, to even like whether they can save them or whether they can't and they can just be together. That's what they're looking for, and that's what people are going to grasp at the end. And I think like it, oddly enough, it kind of reminds me of those, like, it's just like this movie that it's kind of telling you that the world's always going to be cynical, but we don't have to be, and we, like, human nature is not. And I think that that kind of ends up making it a little bit like, I think that's what adds to the whimsy and makes it like, I don't know, I didn't feel super bummed out at the end of this, even though the bomb, like, well, like things happen. I don't know. I guess we can go all the way just to continue with the theme, but the bombs do go off. It turns out that it's real. And so I think that that like kind of cements it. Like, I think if either it had been a false flag, or if like there was a bunch of ways they could have gone with this. And I think like holding on to that theme of like, you want to be with someone that you that appreciates you as a person, regardless of how much you've been around them. I think that makes it like, that kind of makes this movie a little bit better than just having it be like a cynical, here's what happens when everyone dies movie,
Yeah. Totally.
It also reminded me a lot about, I think it's interesting because how much that kind of thing actually did happen during like the 2018 Hawaii bomb scare.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, where it's like the stories are all really interesting, but it's like people like, I just sat on my porch and got incredibly drunk, And it's like, yeah, because what do you do?
That was the most fucked up story that had come out in
Oh
so
my
long.
God.
That was
It's
so
so
fucking
messed
crazy.
up.
Yeah.
Well, and
But it
it's
also
funny because like again, the idea of like because the news slowly goes out. Like at first it's just with Harry, and then he goes to the diner and he starts telling people, and they start telling people, and so by the end of it, everyone kind of knows what's going to happen, and it kind of creates more chaos. But like again, living in Los Angeles, that's kind of how it feels. I remember there was a point where we were talking to some people, some friends that we knew in Pasadena, and they were saying that like, oh yeah, there's been a bunch of robberies in LA, and like they've been happening, and like someone's been shooting people in the while they were robbing them, and we're like, we haven't heard about that at all.
Yeah.
Or like
Sorry.
we would have stuff in that was going on in Koreatown and they hadn't heard about it. And it's just kind of like LA's so big, it's almost like every block is a world upon itself. And so again,
Very distinct
the
places.
yeah, the guy who wrote this, he knew like he had lived in LA for a while. Like again, even the helicopter pilot, he they find him and he's like, "Oh, let me go grab someone." And then he comes back because he's a guy, and then he comes back with a guy, and he's like, "Is there a problem here?" And the guy's like, "No, let's go." And so like even that, because back in the '80s when being gay wasn't looked well upon, still, I mean, we can argue that it's still not, but LA has always been a little bit more progressive, just because there's it's a little bit more favorable, and I kind of like that they even address that like in 1980s LA, it wasn't as like it was more acceptable than it was probably in every other part of the country other than maybe New York.
Hmm.
And so again, like it just kind of, and I think it's just because in LA, in New York, there's just so many people that it's kind of hard to not accept other people because they're just around all the time, and so you get very used to them right away. And um I think that the guy who wrote this really did a good job of kind of conveying just how many different personalities and how many different lifestyles you can run into just kind of going. I mean, of course they do a lot more than just go to the store, but like just kind of going around and walking around at night. And I thought that was a nice touch as well. And again, it's funny, like it's funny and also a little bit depressing that like yeah, in this movie they don't trust the cops. The cops are seen as like authoritarian and kind of shitty, and and there's still like even though they do accept the helicopter pilot, he does have to make sure that that's something that they'll accept. And it's like, as sad as it is, a lot of that stuff still resonates right now, where I don't trust the cops still. If anything, that's gone worse. And so it's funny to watch these kind of movies and see how much of it is still relatable in both good and bad ways, where it's like it's just all still there. And I don't know, it's just a little bit depressing, but it's interesting to see that kind of like when you're watching something that's actually trying to say something and you see how they view the world, and it's similar to how we view it.
Yeah, and the main character's
Yeah.
like, "Sorry guys, that was my bad. I heard a rumor. Bubba from Forrest Gump is now dead with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Sorry."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Anthony Edwards does a really good job of playing the lead, because he really conveys how much weight is on his shoulder. And there's like a scene near the end where they kind of think it's a false flag for a second, and he's kind of like, "Holy shit, what if I did all this and it
I
was for
know
nothing?" And
that was crazy. Yeah.
and like I don't know, it's you just realize in that scene how much this is weighing on him on both ends, because it's kind of like in that moment he's both relieved that it's not going to happen and they're safe, and terrified because of everything that's happened that night so far has had real consequences. And so it's kind of like, oh shit, this like the fact that it hits him. And I think this is, I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of Anthony Edwards and stuff, but he does a really good job in this. I thought he did great.
Yeah, he did.
I've
What
watched
else has he
8
been in?
seasons of ER with him because he's like
Oh, he's a big
he's
ER guy.
he's the lead for the first 8 seasons of ER, and
Gotcha.
like he's great in that too. But
Hell yeah.
he's also in a really terrible show called 0 Hour, which is like one of those really awful like NBC limited run things that's like conspiracy theory, like treasure hunting, that kind of thing. And it's really fascinating to watch that. You should check it out because it's a great example of how even really good actors, like who have won Emmys and that kind of thing, can be made to look terrible with the wrong production crew. and like the wrong script because oh my god, it's bad.
Damn. What is it called?
I've
0
watched all of
Hour?
it. Highly recommend.
That sounds funny. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's also like, hey, Anthony Edwards, you don't have to do everything about the end of the world, bro. Like, we get it.
Yeah.
He's great,
End of
though.
life in ER. End of world everywhere else.
If it had been Kurt Russell, I would expect him to catch that nuke and throw it back at Russia.
Yeah,
Whoever shoots it.
totally. That would have been so much more action packed.
And I think you need it. Like, even Nicolas Cage, even because we're talking like Vampire's Kiss Nicolas Cage, who's like skinnier and stuff. But I think they have too much of a presence. You almost need someone like Anthony Edwards
Who's like
who
normal.
looks like they wouldn't be able to handle this, you know?
Right. Like this movie felt like it could have come out like so easily in like 2007. Like
Yeah.
if this would have come out in 2007, it would have been like quirky indie comedy would have been the tagline.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it was so proto. I feel like what like a lot of like the millennial sense of humor became in that kind of area, and I think having sort of like a nerdy leading man was that was something that I was very used to already. I was like, I know exactly what this movie is going to be like because I've seen this movie. I grew up with this movie. I went to college with this movie. You know,
Right.
And like
I kind of liked it for
Whittingham,
that. What's up?
Totally. Mayor Whittingham is playing like the proto in like Magic Pixie Dream
Yeah.
Girl with like the
short
shaggiest,
haircut.
coolest mullet you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And also like refusing to tell her real name and like not really saying where she lives, but also being kind of like quirky and cool. And she knows all the old like jazz musicians. It's it totally falls within that like weird
she wants to go dancing at midnight.
Romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah,
I love it. Yeah,
yeah.
That's the most rom-com thing ever. And it's also like, because again, like I just said Anthony Edwards does a good job, but Mary Willingham does a great job because you see her at the beginning, and that's why like when Josh was saying that this beginning is taking too long, I was like, no, because she's about to disappear for almost the entire film, and you really have to care about her enough to kind of want him to reach her,
right?
And
or to get why he's searching for her.
And then at the end, her like she has to catch up, so she also has a very difficult role. Where imagine if someone you met yesterday that you talked to comes in and is like, "Oh, we're about to die. You need to come with me. Like this is bad."
Yeah.
Or like, and there's like it takes him so long to explain to her what's happening, and it's kind of that rom-com thing where he like just come on. But in this one, it actually makes sense because how do you explain to someone like, oh, by the way,
yeah,
there's a bomb coming? I think maybe.
Look, I know you're coming off of Valium, but
yeah, I know that was a strong Valium. That that really got her. And then the grandma's like, maybe we could give her these diet pills. That's true. That's true.
God.
Yeah, that was funny.
It was.
Yeah, it was good.
It's a really good movie.
Good. Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, but like as soon as it came on, like we've been watching kind of like a run of like not great movies on the podcast, and it was awesome to see something that was like really entertaining and just like awesome from scene one to the end. So I was very excited this morning at 6 a.m. when I started watching it.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, the reason I kind of wanted to watch this, it might not have a lot in common with The Empty Space, but I do like that we have the very similar theme of love in the world that we live in, and kind of like, do you pick the, do you live in the real world that has all its cynicism if you can find love, or do you kind of try to break out of it and pretend that it's not real? And so I think overall it works really well. I think I did stretch that so that it would fit in why I picked it during Empty Space Month, but I felt like I fakely pulled it off. But yeah,
also like a weird kind of abstract sort of science fiction world. It's like it's very similar vibes.
Yeah, and I think it's that kind of thing where it's like I miss the days when studios would fund this kind of movies and not just A24. I do think if you put an A24 at the beginning of this film,
100%.
I would have believed it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kids still wouldn't have gone to see it, but they would have talked about it as if they were going to see it, which is it's as good as it gets on film Twitter.
Still fucking ready for that one, yeah.
But yeah, Abby, Josh, any last words on the Miracle Mile?
Come on this journey with me.
I will say that with the theme of love conquers everything and is like memorable even at the end of the apocalypse. So Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham, I think, met before this movie, but they have essentially known each other for 35 years at this point. And Mayor Winningham has been married and divorced 3 times, and then in 2001 they eloped and are still married today.
Oh,
Really?
So
They
sweet.
had their own miracle
Damn,
mile.
yeah.
That's
That's
crazy. Damn,
Yeah.
that's
Charming.
amazing.
Right.
And in like I think it's before they eloped, but I could be wrong. It might be after. But Anthony Edwards is talking in an interview about this movie and talking about like how great of an actress Mare Winningham is. It's so sweet.
Yeah. That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. And like again, like this movie, they met and then they found each other. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, super cool. But yeah, guys, I think you should watch this movie. I think it's again, this is like one of the perfect reasons we have this podcast is to kind of get these names out to people so they can check out these movies. Even better, it's on Tubi. It costs you nothing except having to watch the same dog food commercial 4 times during the middle of it. It is funny because like they'll be driving and like someone's shot and like they're like outrunning the cops and then it just cuts and they're like, does your cat like her kitty litter? And you're like, oh yeah, this is Tubi.
Did y'all
Yes,
get
she
the
does.
right at the top of the elevator, like as they're going, like at the end after the really emotional elevator scene, as they're getting to the top, that's where Tubi put a commercial. And like,
Yeah, I got cut there too. Yeah, when the elevator doors open, I was like, yeah. Fuck. Yeah.
It's
2 for 25.
Yeah.
incredible.
That's so fucking funny.
Well, cool. Well, thank you guys for joining as always. Thank you, Abby. Check out her work in the empty space right there. And then soon maybe you'll be able to watch it on Tubi. I can't tell you that until you've paid to watch it in other ways. But that's a hint to things to
Price is
come.
high. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time on the Bum Squad.